Question 1. Following a sophisticated ransomware attack that rendered critical operational systems inaccessible and led to significant data corruption, a manufacturing firm, which has implemented both ISO 31000, 2018 compliant risk management, and ISO 22301, 2019 certified business continuity management system, needs to initiate its recovery process. The attack has exceeded the impact thresholds identified during the business impact analysis (BIA) phase of the BCMS. Considering the principles of ISO 31000 regarding risk treatment and the objectives of ISO 22301 for resilience, which of the following actions would most effectively align with the integrated approach to managing such a disruptive event? Option A. Engage external consultants to develop an entirely new business continuity plan from scratch, as the existing plan has clearly failed to prevent the incident. Option B. Conduct a comprehensive post-incident forensic analysis to identify the root cause of the cyber attack before initiating any recovery actions to ensure future prevention. Option C. Immediately deploy predefined recovery strategies and activate incident response plans, prioritizing the restoration of critical functions based on the established recovery time objectives, RTO, and recovery point objectives, RPO, derived from the BIA, while adhering to the organization's risk appetite as defined in the risk management framework. Option D. Temporarily halt all business operations until a new, more robust cybersecurity framework can be designed and implemented to prevent any recurrence. The correct answer is C. Immediately deploy predefined recovery strategies and activate incident response plans, prioritizing the restoration of critical functions based on the established recovery time objectives, RTO, and recovery point objectives, RPO, derived from the BIA, while adhering to the organization's risk appetite as defined in the risk management framework. Explanation. The core principle being tested here is the integration of risk management, specifically as guided by ISO 31000, 2018, with the requirements of a business continuity management system, BCMS, aligned with ISO 22301. ISO 31000 emphasizes a systematic, iterative, and integrated approach to risk management, which should permeate all organizational activities. ISO 22301, conversely, focuses on establishing, implementing, maintaining, and continually improving a BCMS to protect against, reduce the likelihood of, and ensure the resilience of an organization to disruptive incidents. When a significant disruptive event, such as a cyber attack leading to data loss, occurs, the effectiveness of the BCMS is paramount. The ISO 31000 framework mandates that the organization's risk appetite and tolerance are considered when developing and implementing risk treatments. In this scenario, the cyber attack represents a realized risk. The subsequent actions taken by the organization should reflect a mature risk management process that has informed the BCMS. Specifically, the organization's response should be guided by the predefined risk treatments and contingency plans developed during the BCMS implementation, which were themselves informed by the risk assessment process mandated by ISO 31000. The focus should be on restoring critical business functions within acceptable timeframes, minimizing impact, and learning from the incident to improve both the BCMS and the overall risk management framework. The recovery strategy must be aligned with the organization's established risk appetite and tolerance levels, ensuring that the chosen recovery methods are appropriate and sustainable. Therefore, the most effective approach is to leverage the pre-established recovery strategies and procedures that were developed based on the risk assessment and integrated into the BCMS, thereby demonstrating a cohesive application of both standards. Question 2. An organization is experiencing a disconnect between its formally documented risk appetite statement and the actual risk-taking behaviors observed across different departments. Risk assessments are completed diligently, but decisions frequently seem to disregard the stated risk tolerances. Analysis of the situation suggests that, while the framework is in place, the underlying organizational culture does not actively reinforce risk-aware decision-making. Which of the following is the most critical factor for an ISO 31000, 2018 compliant risk management implementer to bridge this gap? Option A. Revising the risk appetite statement to align more closely with the observed risk-taking behaviors, thereby reducing perceived conflict. Option B. Fostering a culture where risk management is integrated into daily activities and decision-making, supported by visible leadership commitment to risk-informed actions. Option C. Enhancing the frequency of risk awareness training sessions for all employees, focusing on the technical aspects of risk assessment. Option D. Implementing a more sophisticated quantitative risk analysis methodology to provide clearer data for decision makers. The correct answer is B. Fostering a culture where risk management is integrated into daily activities and decision-making, supported by visible leadership commitment to risk-informed actions. Explanation: ISO 31000-2018 emphasizes that the effectiveness of risk management is significantly influenced by human and cultural factors within an organization. These factors shape how individuals perceive, assess, respond to, and communicate about risks. Organizational culture, in particular, sets the tone and establishes norms regarding risk-taking, accountability, and the integration of risk management into decision-making processes. A culture that encourages open communication, learning from mistakes, and ethical behavior is more conducive to robust risk management than one characterized by fear, blame, or a lack of transparency. The standard highlights that leadership commitment and the active involvement of people at all levels are crucial for embedding risk management principles. Without addressing these underlying human and cultural elements, even the most well-designed risk management framework may fail to achieve its objectives. This includes understanding how cognitive biases can affect risk perception, the importance of clear communication channels for risk information, and the impact of organizational structure and power dynamics on risk reporting and decision-making. Therefore, a comprehensive approach to risk management must consider the behavioral aspects and the prevailing organizational ethos. Question 3. An organization is developing its initial implementation plan for a comprehensive risk management framework aligned with ISO 31000-2018. The proposed plan outlines the creation of a detailed risk register, the establishment of a risk management policy document, and the scheduling of initial risk awareness training sessions for all staff. However, the plan does not explicitly detail how the risk management process will be embedded within the existing corporate governance structure, or how identified risks will be systematically considered in strategic decision-making forums. Which critical aspect of ISO 31000-2018 implementation does this proposed plan most significantly overlook? Option A. The integration of risk management into all organizational activities, including governance and strategic planning. Option B. The development of specific risk treatment strategies for all identified high-priority risks. Option C. The regular review and evaluation of the risk management framework's effectiveness. Option D. The establishment of clear roles and responsibilities for risk management personnel. The correct answer is A. The integration of risk management into all organizational activities, including governance and strategic planning. Explanation: the core of establishing an effective risk management framework, as guided by ISO 31000-2018, lies in its integration with the organization's overall governance and strategic objectives. Clause 5.2 of the standard, titled Integration, emphasizes that risk management should be an integral part of all organizational activities, including decision-making, strategy setting, and operational processes. An implementation plan that fails to align with these fundamental principles, by focusing solely on isolated risk identification, without considering the broader organizational context and existing governance structures, will likely be superficial and ineffective. Specifically, an implementation plan that prioritizes the development of a standalone risk register and the creation of a dedicated risk management policy, without ensuring these elements are woven into the existing management systems and decision-making processes, neglects the crucial aspect of integration. This approach treats risk management as an add-on rather than a fundamental component of how the organization operates and makes choices. ISO 31000-2018 advocates for a holistic approach where risk management principles inform and are informed by the organization's culture, objectives, and governance. Therefore, an implementation plan that neglects the integration with established governance and strategic direction, focusing instead on the creation of separate risk management artifacts without embedding them into the organizational fabric, is fundamentally flawed according to the standard's intent. Question 4. Consider an organization that has conducted a thorough risk analysis for a new product launch, identifying potential market volatility and supply chain disruptions. During the risk evaluation phase, the organization's risk management committee reviews these identified risks against its predefined risk appetite statement, which indicates a low tolerance for financial losses exceeding 5% of projected revenue and a moderate tolerance for reputational damage. The committee also considers the regulatory compliance requirements mandated by the Global Trade Harmonization Act, which imposes strict penalties for product recalls due to supply chain failures. Based on ISO 31000/2018 principles, what is the primary purpose of the organization's activity in this scenario? Option A, to develop a comprehensive communication plan for all stakeholders regarding the potential risks of the product launch. Option B, to quantify the exact financial impact of market volatility and supply chain disruptions using advanced statistical modeling. Option C, to determine whether the identified risks are acceptable or tolerable in light of the organization's objectives and the defined risk criteria. Option D, to identify and implement specific risk treatment options such as hedging strategies and alternative supplier agreements. The correct answer is C, to determine whether the identified risks are acceptable or tolerable in light of the organization's objectives and the defined risk criteria. Explanation. The process of risk evaluation, as outlined in ISO 31000/2018, involves comparing the results of risk analysis with established risk criteria to determine whether a risk and its magnitude are acceptable or tolerable. This comparison is fundamental to making informed decisions about risk treatment. The standard emphasizes that risk criteria should be defined in the context of the organization's objectives and risk appetite. When evaluating risks, an organization considers various factors, including the source of the risk, its consequences, and the likelihood of those consequences occurring. The evaluation process aims to provide a basis for decisions on whether to accept, treat, avoid, or transfer risks. It is not merely about quantifying risk, but also about understanding its implications within the organizational context, considering legal, regulatory, and other stakeholder requirements. The output of risk evaluation informs the selection of appropriate risk treatments and the prioritization of actions. It is a critical step that bridges the analysis of risks with the decision-making process for managing them effectively. Question 5. When implementing a comprehensive risk management framework aligned with ISO 31000/2018, what is the most effective strategic approach for integrating communication and consultation throughout the entire risk management process, from initial context establishment to monitoring and review? Option A, implementing a one-way communication strategy where risk management findings are disseminated to relevant departments without soliciting feedback. Option B, establishing a proactive, multi-directional dialogue with all relevant internal and external stakeholders, ensuring their input is actively sought and considered at each stage of the risk management process. Option C, limiting consultation to regulatory bodies and key suppliers, with internal communication primarily through formal annual reports. Option D, primarily focusing communication efforts on senior management and the board of directors, with ad hoc consultations for specific risk treatment plans. The correct answer is B, establishing a proactive multi-directional dialogue with all relevant internal and external stakeholders, ensuring their input is actively sought and considered at each stage of the risk management process. Explanation. ISO 31000/2018 emphasizes that communication and consultation are integral and continuous throughout the risk management process, not merely reporting activities. Clause 5. 4. Communication and consultation highlights the need for appropriate, timely, and relevant information to be shared with internal and external stakeholders. This process facilitates understanding, supports decision-making, and fosters engagement in risk management activities. Effective communication ensures that those involved in or affected by risk management activities are informed and can contribute to the process. Consultation involves a two-way exchange of information, seeking input and feedback from stakeholders to inform the risk management process and its outcomes. This continuous dialogue helps in understanding the context, identifying risks, evaluating their significance, and developing appropriate treatment strategies. The goal is to build trust and ensure that risk management is integrated into the organization's culture and decision-making processes. Therefore, The most effective approach to communication and consultation in risk management is one that is proactive, inclusive, and tailored to the specific needs and concerns of diverse stakeholders, ensuring transparency and shared understanding of risks and treatments. Question 6. When an organization conducts a comprehensive SWOT analysis as part of its strategic planning, which of the following best describes how the insights derived from this analysis should be integrated into the ISO 31000-2018 Risk Management Framework to ensure effective risk treatment and strategic alignment? Option A. The identified internal weaknesses and external threats are systematically analyzed to determine their potential impact on organizational objectives, leading to the development of specific risk mitigation strategies that are then documented and prioritized within the risk register. Option B. The external opportunities and threats are prioritized based on their perceived likelihood, and risk treatment plans are developed exclusively for those threats that directly contradict the identified opportunities, bypassing the consideration of internal factors. Option C. The strengths and weaknesses identified in the SWOT analysis are documented as general organizational capabilities, with no direct linkage made to specific risks or the need for risk treatment actions within the formal risk management process. Option D. The SWOT analysis findings are used solely to identify potential new opportunities for business growth, with risk management activities only initiated if these opportunities carry significant financial implications. The correct answer is A. The identified internal weaknesses and external threats are systematically analyzed to determine their potential impact on organizational objectives, leading to the development of specific risk mitigation strategies that are then documented and prioritized within the risk register. Explanation: the core principle of integrating risk management into organizational processes, as advocated by ISO 31000-2018, involves ensuring that risk considerations are a natural part of decision-making and strategic planning, rather than an isolated activity. A SWOT analysis, while a valuable strategic tool, is not inherently a risk management process itself. Its components, however, directly inform the risk identification and assessment phases of the ISO 31000 framework. Strengths and weaknesses are internal factors that can influence the organization's ability to manage risks or create new ones. Opportunities and threats are external factors that can present new risks or impact existing ones. When a SWOT analysis is conducted with a risk management lens, the insights gained from identifying internal capabilities and limitations, as well as external environmental factors, are used to inform the risk register and the selection of appropriate risk treatments. Specifically, an internal weakness that exacerbates an external threat will be a prime candidate for risk mitigation, while a strong internal capability that can capitalize on an external opportunity might be leveraged to reduce the likelihood or impact of a related risk. The key is to systematically translate the findings of the SWOT analysis into actionable risk management activities, ensuring that the organization's strategic objectives are protected and enhanced by a robust understanding of its risk landscape. This proactive integration ensures that risk management is not a separate compliance exercise, but a fundamental enabler of organizational success, aligning with the holistic approach promoted by ISO 31000. Question 7. Consider a global manufacturing firm operating under evolving environmental regulations in multiple jurisdictions, including stringent new emission standards in the European Union and water usage restrictions in a developing nation. The firm's risk management implementer is tasked with identifying all relevant stakeholders for the purpose of managing risks associated with compliance and operational continuity. Which of the following approaches most comprehensively addresses the diverse stakeholder landscape in this scenario according to ISO 31000-2018 principles? Option A. Broadening the scope to include internal departments, operations, R&D, finance, external regulators, local community representatives near manufacturing sites, key suppliers of raw materials, and major customers who rely on the firm's products. Option B. Focusing solely on major shareholders and key operational managers who bear direct financial responsibility for compliance failures. Option C. Prioritizing engagement with industry lobby groups and financial analysts, assuming they will effectively represent broader stakeholder interests. Option D. Engaging only with internal management, legal counsel, and the primary regulatory agencies directly enforcing the new standards in each operating region. Correct answer is D. Engaging only with internal management, legal counsel, and the primary regulatory agencies directly enforcing the new standards in each operating region. Explanation. The core principle of effective stakeholder identification within the ISO 31000-2018 framework is to systematically consider all parties who can be affected by, or perceive themselves to be affected by an organization's activities, decisions, or outcomes related to risk. This involves a multifaceted approach that goes beyond obvious internal groups. It requires looking externally at regulatory bodies, industry associations, suppliers, customers, and even the broader community or environmental groups if their interests intersect with the organization's risk landscape. Furthermore, understanding the interconnectedness of these stakeholders and their varying levels of influence and interest is crucial for tailoring communication and engagement strategies. A comprehensive identification process ensures that all relevant perspectives are considered during risk assessment and treatment, leading to more robust and accepted risk management outcomes. Overlooking a significant stakeholder group can lead to unforeseen challenges, resistance to risk treatments, or failure to capitalize on opportunities. Therefore, the process should be iterative and adaptable, reflecting changes in the organization's context and stakeholder relationships. Question 8. An organization has implemented a new digital security protocol designed to mitigate the risk of unauthorized data access. During an internal audit, it was found that while the protocol's design specifications are robust and theoretically capable of preventing breaches, a significant number of employees have not completed the mandatory training on its proper use, leading to frequent misconfigurations and bypasses of the system. According to ISO 31000-2018 principles for risk treatment, what critical aspect of the control's effectiveness is likely being compromised in this scenario? Option A, control self-assessment. Option B, risk appetite alignment. Option C, operational effectiveness. Option D, design integrity. The correct answer is C, operational effectiveness. Explanation. ISO 31000-2018 emphasizes that controls are treatments for risks. When assessing the effectiveness of these controls, an implementer must consider their design and operational aspects. Design effectiveness refers to whether a control, if operating as intended, is capable of achieving the desired risk reduction. Operational effectiveness, conversely, pertains to whether the control is actually operating as designed, and whether the people responsible for operating it possess the necessary skills and authority. A control that is well designed but poorly operated will not effectively manage the risk. Therefore, to ascertain the true effectiveness of a control in reducing residual risk, one must evaluate both its inherent capability to address the risk, design, and its actual performance in practice, operation. This dual assessment ensures that the implemented risk treatment is both theoretically sound and practically functional. Without assessing operational effectiveness, the residual risk might be underestimated because the control's potential is not being realized. The objective is to confirm that the control is consistently applied and achieving its intended purpose in the context of the organization's risk appetite and objectives. Question 9. When seeking to enhance an organization's risk management framework in alignment with ISO 31000-2018, what is the most fundamental principle guiding the iterative process of improvement, ensuring the framework remains effective and relevant over time? Option A, proactive identification and integration of lessons learned and contextual changes to optimize framework performance. Option B, formal documentation of all risk management activities to ensure compliance with regulatory reporting requirements. Option C, periodic reassessment of the risk register based on historical incident data to identify new risk treatments. Option D, benchmarking the framework against industry best practices to adopt standardized risk mitigation strategies. The correct answer is A, proactive identification and integration of lessons learned and contextual changes to optimize framework performance. Explanation. The ISO 31000-2018 standard emphasizes a systematic approach to the continual improvement of the risk management framework. Clause 10, monitoring and review, and Clause 9, performance, are crucial in this regard. Specifically, the standard advocates for a proactive approach to identifying opportunities for enhancing the framework's effectiveness and efficiency. This involves not just reacting to failures or incidents, but also actively seeking ways to optimize the integration of risk management into organizational activities and decision-making. Performance evaluation, as outlined in Clause 9, provides data and insights that are fundamental for identifying areas where the framework may be underperforming or where new risks or opportunities have emerged. The review of the framework, a continuous process, then uses this performance data to inform adjustments and improvements. This cyclical approach, often referred to as a plan-do-check-act or similar improvement cycle, ensures that the risk management framework remains relevant, robust, and aligned with the organization's objectives and changing context. The standard stresses that improvement should be driven by lessons learned, changes in the organization's internal and external context, and evolving risk appetite. Therefore, a robust process for collecting feedback, analyzing performance metrics, and implementing corrective and preventive actions is essential for the continual improvement of the risk management framework. Question 10. In the context of implementing ISO 31000-2018, which statement most accurately reflects the ultimate assignment of responsibility for the organization's risk management framework? Option A. The ultimate responsibility for the risk management framework rests with the highest level of management. Option B. Risk management responsibilities are distributed equally among all employees, with no single entity holding ultimate accountability. Option C. Risk management responsibilities are primarily delegated to the Internal Audit Department for independent oversight. Option D. The Chief Risk Officer, if appointed, holds the sole ultimate responsibility for all risk management activities. The correct answer is A. The ultimate responsibility for the risk management framework rests with the highest level of management. Explanation: ISO 31000-2018 emphasizes that the ultimate responsibility for risk management resides with the highest level of management. While specific tasks and oversight can be delegated, the overarching accountability for establishing, implementing, and maintaining an effective risk management framework remains with leadership. This means that while individuals or committees might be assigned to manage specific risks or operationalize certain aspects of the framework, the board and senior executives are ultimately answerable for the organization's risk profile and the efficacy of its risk management processes. This principle ensures that risk management is integrated into the organization's strategy and objectives, rather than being a purely operational or departmental function. The standard advocates for clear communication of roles and responsibilities throughout the organization, ensuring that everyone understands their part in managing risks. But this delegation does not absolve top management of their ultimate duty of care and oversight. Question 11. When implementing a risk management framework aligned with ISO 31000-2018, an organization is developing its approach to stakeholder engagement. The primary objective is to ensure that the risk management process is inclusive and effectively considers diverse perspectives. Which fundamental aspect of stakeholder engagement is most critical for achieving this objective in the context of establishing the organization's risk management context and criteria? Option A. Documenting all stakeholder interactions and feedback in a formal risk management report to demonstrate compliance with the standard. Option B. Establishing clear, two-way communication channels and consultation mechanisms to understand and address stakeholder expectations and concerns throughout the risk management process. Option C. Developing a comprehensive risk register that details the potential impact of each risk on every stakeholder group. Option D. Ascertaining the specific risk appetite and tolerance levels of each identified stakeholder group to tailor communication and involvement. The correct answer is D. Ascertaining the specific risk appetite and tolerance levels of each identified stakeholder group to tailor communication and involvement. Explanation: the core principle of stakeholder engagement in ISO 31000-2018 is to ensure that risk management processes are informed by and responsive to the perspectives and concerns of those affected by or who can affect the organization's objectives. This involves identifying stakeholders, understanding their needs and expectations, and involving them in the risk management process in an appropriate manner. Clause 5. 3. Communication and consultation, and Clause 5. 4. Scope, context, and criteria of ISO 31000, 2018 emphasize the importance of engaging with internal and external stakeholders to establish the context of risk management and to ensure that risk assessments and treatments are relevant and effective. Effective engagement fosters trust, improves the quality of information used in decision-making, and enhances the acceptance of risk management outcomes. It is not merely about informing stakeholders, but about a two-way dialogue to gather input and provide feedback. The complexity of stakeholder interests, their varying levels of influence, and the need for tailored communication strategies are critical considerations for an implementer. The goal is to create a shared understanding of risks and how they are being managed, thereby supporting the achievement of organizational objectives. Question 12. Consider an organization that has implemented a comprehensive risk management framework aligned with ISO 31000, 2018. During a periodic review of its operational risk controls, the risk management team discovers that a key control designed to mitigate the risk of data breaches has been inconsistently applied across different departments due to a lack of clear accountability and insufficient training. This inconsistency has led to a minor but recurring security incident. Which of the following best describes the primary implication of this finding for the organization's monitoring and review process? Option A. The monitoring and review process has confirmed the overall effectiveness of the risk management framework, as the identified deficiency did not result in a significant impact. Option B. The monitoring and review process has successfully identified a control deficiency and a potential breakdown in the implementation of the risk treatment plan, necessitating a revision of the control's operational procedures and enhanced oversight. Option C. The monitoring and review process should be suspended until all control deficiencies are rectified to avoid further complications. Option D. The monitoring and review process has highlighted that the risk appetite statement needs immediate revision to accommodate the current level of control application. Correct answer is B. The monitoring and review process has successfully identified a control deficiency and a potential breakdown in the implementation of the risk treatment plan, necessitating a revision of the control's operational procedures and enhanced oversight. Explanation. The monitoring and review process within ISO 31000, 2018 is a continuous activity that assesses the effectiveness of the risk management framework and its application. It involves checking whether the controls are working as intended, if the risk appetite is being adhered to, and if the risk treatments are achieving their objectives. This process also identifies new risks, changes in existing risks, and the overall performance of the risk management system. It is crucial for ensuring that the risk management framework remains relevant and effective in achieving the organization's objectives, especially in dynamic environments. Monitoring and review activities are integrated into the organization's processes. They provide timely information for decision-making and continuous improvement. This feedback loop is essential for adapting the risk management approach to evolving internal and external contexts, thereby enhancing resilience and performance. The effectiveness of monitoring and review is directly linked to the quality of data collected and the rigor of the analysis performed. It's not just about checking boxes, but about understanding the dynamics of risk and the effectiveness of responses. Question 13. Consider an organization that has recently updated its risk management policy in alignment with ISO 31000, 2018. The Chief Executive Officer, CEO, has communicated this updated policy to all employees via email and has included a brief mention of risk management in the company's annual report. However, there has been no adjustment to departmental budgets to specifically fund risk management activities, nor has risk management performance been incorporated into executive performance reviews. Based on the principles of leadership and commitment outlined in ISO 31000, 2018, what is the most significant indicator of the CEO's commitment to embedding risk management within the organization's operations? Option A. Including a general statement about the importance of risk management in company-wide communications. Option B. Appointing a chief risk officer without providing them with the necessary authority or budget. Option C. Issuing a formal policy document and communicating its existence through internal channels. Option D. Actively integrating risk management considerations into strategic decision-making processes and allocating dedicated resources for risk management initiatives. Correct answer is D. actively integrating risk management considerations into strategic decision-making processes and allocating dedicated resources for risk management initiatives. Explanation. The question probes the understanding of how leadership and commitment, as foundational elements of ISO 31000-2018, translate into tangible actions within an organization's risk management framework. Specifically, it focuses on the practical demonstration of commitment by top management. ISO 31000-2018 emphasizes that leadership and commitment are crucial for the effective integration and implementation of risk management. This involves not only establishing policies and objectives, but also actively ensuring that risk management is embedded within the organization's culture and decision-making processes. Demonstrating commitment is more than just stating intent. It requires visible actions that reinforce the importance of risk management. This includes allocating necessary resources, actively participating in risk reviews, and ensuring accountability for risk management performance. The integration of risk management into strategic planning and performance management systems is a key indicator of leadership's commitment, as it shows that risks are considered in the pursuit of organizational objectives. Without this active integration and visible support, risk management efforts can become a superficial exercise. The effectiveness of risk management is directly tied to the degree to which leadership champions its principles and practices throughout the organization. Question 14. A multinational corporation, operating under diverse and evolving environmental regulations across several jurisdictions, is conducting a risk assessment for its new manufacturing facility. The risk analysis phase has identified potential noncompliance risks related to wastewater discharge, air emissions, and hazardous waste disposal, with varying likelihoods and consequences. The organization has a defined risk appetite, but the specific impact of noncompliance on its reputation and potential for legal penalties is complex and difficult to quantify precisely. Which of the following actions most accurately reflects the purpose and outcome of the risk evaluation step, as defined by ISO 31000-2018 in this scenario? Option A. Developing a comprehensive list of all potential risk treatments for every identified risk, regardless of its analyzed severity or likelihood. Option B. Comparing the analyzed risks against the organization's risk appetite and tolerance criteria to determine which risks require treatment and to inform decisions on the acceptability of residual risks. Option C. Prioritizing risks solely based on the likelihood score generated during the risk analysis phase, without considering the consequence or the organization's specific risk criteria. Option D. Quantifying the exact financial cost of every potential regulatory fine and legal proceeding to establish a definitive monetary threshold for risk acceptance. Correct answer is B. Comparing the analyzed risks against the organization's risk appetite and tolerance criteria to determine which risks require treatment and to inform decisions on the acceptability of residual risks. Explanation. The core principle of ISO 31000-2018 is that risk management should be integrated into an organization's governance and decision-making processes. When assessing risks, particularly in the context of complex projects or evolving regulatory landscapes, a nuanced approach is required. The standard emphasizes the importance of understanding the context, identifying risks, analyzing them, and then evaluating them against established criteria. Risk evaluation is the process of comparing the results of risk analysis with risk criteria to determine whether the risk and its magnitude are acceptable or tolerable. This step is crucial for informing decisions about whether risk treatment is required. It involves considering the organization's risk appetite and tolerance, as well as other relevant factors such as stakeholder expectations and the potential impact on objectives. The outcome of risk evaluation directly guides the selection and implementation of appropriate risk treatments. Therefore, a robust risk evaluation process ensures that decisions made regarding risk are informed, justified, and aligned with the organization's overall strategy and objectives, rather than being based on arbitrary thresholds or incomplete analysis. Question 15. When establishing a new operational division within a global conglomerate, which approach best embodies the principles of risk management as defined by ISO 31000-2018, ensuring a holistic and embedded risk culture from the outset? Option A. Implementing a comprehensive risk register only after the new division has been fully operational for one fiscal year to allow for the collection of historical performance data. Option B. focusing risk management efforts on the financial risks of the new division, as these are typically the most significant and quantifiable, and deferring the consideration of operational and strategic risks until later stages. Option C. Initiating risk identification and assessment activities during the conceptualization and design phases of the new division, and ensuring these activities are continued and adapted throughout its entire life cycle, from implementation to potential cessation. Option D. Delegating risk management responsibilities solely to the Internal Audit Department, which will conduct periodic reviews of the new division's operational risks on a quarterly basis. The correct answer is C. Initiating risk identification and assessment activities during the conceptualization and design phases of the new division, and ensuring these activities are continued and adapted throughout its entire life cycle, from implementation to potential cessation. Explanation: the fundamental principle of risk management, as outlined in ISO 31000/2018, is that risk management should be integrated into all organizational activities. This integration ensures that risk considerations are not an afterthought, but are embedded within decision-making processes at all levels. When an organization establishes a new operational division, the risk management framework should be applied from the outset of its conceptualization and design, not merely as a reactive measure once operations commence. This proactive approach aligns with the principle of risk management being an integral part of governance and decision-making. Considering the life cycle of the division, from inception to potential closure, risk management activities should be present throughout. This encompasses identifying risks associated with the business case, design, implementation, operation, and eventual decommissioning or evolution of the division. The principle of integrated means that risk management is part of the organizational culture and processes, influencing strategic planning, project management, and day-to-day operations. It is not a standalone function, but a component of effective management. Therefore, applying risk management principles to the new division from its very inception, encompassing its entire life cycle, is the most consistent and effective approach according to the standard. Question 16. An international logistics firm specializing in time-sensitive cross-border shipments is establishing its risk management framework. Considering the dynamic nature of global trade, which element is most crucial for accurately defining the scope of its risk management process to ensure comprehensive coverage and effectiveness? Option A. Limiting the scope to only the direct contractual obligations with key clients. Option B. Concentrating solely on the immediate financial risks associated with currency exchange rate fluctuations. Option C. Primarily focusing on the internal operational efficiency metrics of the company's fleet management. Option D. Explicitly incorporating the diverse and evolving regulatory compliance requirements across all operating jurisdictions. The correct answer is D. Explicitly incorporating the diverse and evolving regulatory compliance requirements across all operating jurisdictions. Explanation: the scope of a risk management process, as defined by ISO 31000/2018, is the boundary and applicability of the risk management activities. It establishes what is included and excluded from the risk management process, ensuring that it is focused and relevant to the organization's objectives. When defining the scope, an organization must consider its internal and external context, including its objectives, stakeholders, the specific activities, products, services, and locations involved. It also involves understanding the interfaces and dependencies with other processes or activities that might be outside the defined scope, but could influence the risks within it. The scope should be clearly documented and communicated. For an international logistics firm dealing with cross-border shipments, a critical factor in defining the scope of its risk management process would be to explicitly include the regulatory frameworks of all countries where it operates, as non-compliance can lead to significant disruptions, financial penalties, and reputational damage. This is because the external context, particularly legal and regulatory requirements, directly shapes the risks faced and the appropriate risk treatments. Ignoring these external factors would result in an incomplete and ineffective risk management framework. Question 17. When considering the integration of risk management principles with established organizational frameworks like quality management systems, e.g., ISO 9001, or environmental management systems, e.g., ISO 14001, what is the most significant advantage emphasized by ISO 2018 for an implementer seeking to embed risk-based thinking throughout an enterprise. Option A. Reduced reliance on top management for strategic risk oversight due to distributed responsibilities across functional departments. Option B. A more comprehensive set of risk appetite statements tailored to each individual management system's specific objectives. Option C. Enhanced efficiency and effectiveness of the overall management system through the avoidance of duplicated efforts and leveraging of existing processes. Option D. The creation of entirely new risk assessment methodologies that are distinct from those used in operational planning. The correct answer is C. Enhanced efficiency and effectiveness of the overall management system through the avoidance of duplicated efforts and leveraging of existing processes. Explanation. The question asks about the primary benefit of integrating risk management with other management systems, such as quality or environmental management, according to the principles outlined in ISO 31000. 2018. ISO 31000 emphasizes a holistic and systematic approach to risk management that is integrated into an organization's overall governance and strategic planning. When risk management is embedded within other established management systems, it leverages existing structures, processes, and responsibilities. This integration avoids duplication of effort, streamlines documentation, and ensures that risk considerations are a natural part of decision-making across different functional areas. The synergy created by this integration leads to a more efficient and effective overall management framework, where risks are identified, assessed, and treated in a coordinated manner, rather than in isolation. This enhanced coordination contributes to better resource allocation and a more robust organizational resilience. The standard promotes the idea that risk management should not be a standalone activity, but a fundamental part of all organizational activities and decision-making processes, which is best achieved through integration with other management systems. Question 18. An international logistics firm, Global Freight Solutions, is refining its risk management framework in accordance with ISO 31000, 2018. They are debating the necessary level of detail for documenting their risk register for a new, high-complexity supply chain integration project. The Chief Risk Officer argues for an extremely detailed record, capturing every minor fluctuation in potential risk indicators. The Operations Director believes a more concise summary, focusing only on significant risks and their primary controls, is sufficient. Considering the principles of ISO 31000, 2018 regarding documented information, which of the following best reflects the appropriate approach for Global Freight Solutions? Option A. Maintain a comprehensive, exhaustive record of all identified risks, including every minor fluctuation and potential indicator, to ensure absolute transparency and auditability for the high-complexity project. Option B. Document risk information to a level that is proportionate to the risk significance and the complexity of the risk management process, ensuring traceability and support for decision-making, rather than exhaustive detail for every minor indicator. Option C. Limit documentation to a high-level overview of strategic risks, as detailed operational risks are considered the responsibility of individual project managers and do not require central risk register inclusion. Option D. Focus documentation solely on the final risk treatment plans and their implementation status, omitting detailed records of initial risk identification and analysis to streamline the process. The correct answer is B. Document risk information to a level that is proportionate to the risk significance and the complexity of the risk management process, ensuring traceability and support for decision-making, rather than exhaustive detail for every minor indicator. Explanation. ISO 31000, 2018 emphasizes that documented information is crucial for effective risk management. This documentation serves multiple purposes. It provides a record of decisions, supports consistency and repeatability of processes, facilitates communication and understanding, and allows for auditing and review. When considering the retention of risk management documentation, the standard advises that the extent of documentation should be proportionate to the risk being managed and the complexity of the risk management process. It is not about creating exhaustive records for every minor event, but rather ensuring that critical information related to risk identification, analysis, evaluation, treatment, and monitoring is captured and maintained. The primary goal is to support the organization's objectives and ensure accountability. Therefore, the documentation should focus on what is necessary to demonstrate that the risk management framework and processes are effectively implemented and maintained, and that decisions made are traceable and justifiable. This includes records of risk assessments, treatment plans, reviews, and the overall performance of the risk management system. The emphasis is on the quality and relevance of the information, not merely the volume. Question 19. A multinational corporation, Ethelred Industries, is establishing a new subsidiary in a nation with a nascent but rapidly evolving data privacy legal framework, distinct from its home country's established regulations. Simultaneously, within Ethelred Industries, a significant shift towards remote work has accelerated, impacting internal communication channels and employee access to sensitive information. When defining the scope of the risk management framework for this new subsidiary, which of the following considerations most critically reflects the necessity of understanding both the external and internal context as per ISO 31000-2018? Option A. Analyzing the historical market trends of the parent company's primary product line to forecast future revenue streams, independent of the subsidiary's operational risks. Option B. Researching general industry best practices for cybersecurity without specific reference to the new subsidiary's operating environment or Ethelred Industries' internal operational changes. Option C. Evaluating the potential impact of the new nation's data protection laws on customer data handling procedures and the implications of the remote work policy on the security of internal data transmission. Option D. Assessing the financial performance of Ethelred Industries over the last fiscal year to determine budget allocation for risk mitigation activities. The correct answer is C. Evaluating the potential impact of the new nation's data protection laws on customer data handling procedures and the implications of the remote work policy on the security of internal data transmission. Explanation. ISO 31000-2018 emphasizes understanding the organization and its context as a foundational step in effective risk management. This involves comprehending the external and internal factors that can influence the achievement of objectives. External context includes the social, cultural, political, legal, regulatory, economic, and technological environment. Internal context encompasses the organization's governance, structure, culture, policies, objectives, strategies, and resources. Identifying and analyzing these contextual elements allows for a more relevant and effective risk assessment and treatment process. For instance, a new environmental regulation, external context, might necessitate changes in an organization's operational processes and resource allocation, internal context, to mitigate the risk of noncompliance and associated penalties. The scope of the risk management process is also determined by this contextual understanding, ensuring that the identified risks are pertinent to the organization's specific circumstances and goals. This holistic view ensures that risk management is integrated into the organization's overall activities and decision-making, rather than being a standalone function. Question 20. When establishing the risk management framework for a newly formed biopharmaceutical company operating under stringent European Medicines Agency (EMA) guidelines, what is the most appropriate interpretation of the ISO 31000-2018 requirement to use best available information for risk assessment, considering the inherent uncertainties in novel drug development and the need for timely regulatory submissions? Option A. Prioritize empirical data from preclinical trials and early-stage human studies, supplemented by expert consensus on potential adverse events and efficacy, while acknowledging the limitations of predictive modeling for long-term outcomes. Option B. Defer all risk assessments until comprehensive long-term clinical trial data is fully validated to ensure absolute certainty in identifying all potential risks before any regulatory filing. Option C. Implement risk assessments based primarily on qualitative opinions from a broad range of non-specialist employees across different departments, without specific validation of their risk-related expertise. Option D. Rely solely on publicly available scientific literature and historical data from similar, but not identical, drug classes, disregarding any proprietary internal research due to its potential bias. The correct answer is A. Prioritize empirical data from preclinical trials and early-stage human studies, supplemented by expert consensus on potential adverse events and efficacy, while acknowledging the limitations of predictive modeling for long-term outcomes. Explanation. the core principle of utilizing best available information in risk management, as espoused by ISO 31000-2018, emphasizes the pragmatic need to make informed decisions even when perfect or complete data is unavailable. This means employing a combination of internal knowledge, external sources, and expert judgment to form a reasonable basis for risk assessment and treatment. It is not about delaying action until absolute certainty is achieved, but rather about leveraging the most relevant, reliable, and current information that can be reasonably obtained within the context of the organization's objectives and resources. This includes data from past incidents, market analysis, regulatory changes, scientific research, and stakeholder feedback. The selection and validation of this information are crucial, ensuring it is appropriate for the specific risk being analyzed and the decision-making process. The standard encourages a continuous improvement approach, where the quality and availability of information are reviewed and enhanced over time. Question 21. When integrating a risk management framework into an organization's strategic planning processes, which of the following actions is paramount for ensuring effective alignment and relevance as per ISO 31000-2018 principles? Option A. Prioritizing stakeholder feedback on risk perception over internal assessments to shape the risk criteria. Option B. Focusing primarily on the enumeration of all applicable legal and regulatory requirements to establish the risk context. Option C. Detailing all potential operational risks and their specific control measures before considering the strategic implications. Option D. Ensuring the defined scope, context, and criteria directly support and are derived from the organization's strategic objectives and risk appetite. The correct answer is D. Ensuring the defined scope, context, and criteria directly support and are derived from the organization's strategic objectives and risk appetite. Explanation. The establishment of the scope, context, and criteria for a risk management framework is a foundational step as outlined in ISO 31000-2018. The scope defines the boundaries and applicability of the risk management process, including the objectives, activities, and the level of detail. The context involves understanding the internal and external factors that can affect the achievement of objectives, which includes organizational, cultural, social, political, legal, economic, and environmental aspects. Risk criteria are the terms of reference against which the significance of a risk is evaluated. They are derived from objectives, policies, and other requirements, and should be defined in terms of risk categories, consequences, likelihood, and the level of risk. When considering the integration of risk management into strategic planning, the most effective approach is to ensure that the risk management framework directly supports and is aligned with the organization's overall objectives and strategic direction. This means that the scope must encompass the strategic level, the context must consider all relevant strategic factors, and the criteria must be consistent with the organization's risk appetite and tolerance as defined at the strategic level. Other considerations, while important for risk management, are secondary to this strategic alignment. For instance, defining detailed operational risks is part of the scope, but the primary driver for its inclusion and the criteria used to evaluate them should stem from the strategic objectives. Similarly, while stakeholder expectations are part of the context, their influence on the risk management framework is most effectively addressed when linked to strategic outcomes. Regulatory compliance is a critical factor in the context, but the framework's design should be driven by the organization's strategic response to compliance, not solely by the regulations themselves. Question 22. When developing an implementation plan for a comprehensive risk management framework aligned with ISO 31000-2018, what foundational element is most critical for ensuring its long-term integration and effectiveness across all organizational functions and decision-making processes? Option A. Prioritizing the immediate implementation of advanced risk assessment technologies and quantitative modeling techniques without prior cultural adaptation. Option B. Focusing solely on the development of a detailed risk register and comprehensive risk treatment strategies for all identified risks. Option C. Establishing a dedicated, independent risk management department with extensive resources to oversee all risk-related activities and reporting. Option D. Embedding risk management principles into existing organizational processes and fostering a risk-aware culture through consistent communication and leadership endorsement. Correct answer is D. embedding risk management principles into existing organizational processes, and fostering a risk-aware culture through consistent communication and leadership endorsement. Explanation: the effectiveness of a risk management implementation plan hinges on its ability to integrate with the organization's existing structures and processes, rather than operating in isolation. ISO 31000, 2018 emphasizes that risk management should be an integral part of all organizational activities, including strategic planning, decision-making, and operations. An implementation plan that focuses on embedding risk management principles into the organizational culture and daily routines, supported by clear communication and stakeholder engagement, is more likely to achieve sustainable success. This approach ensures that risk management is not perceived as an add-on, but as a fundamental element of how the organization operates. Consideration of the organization's specific context, including its objectives, stakeholders, and the nature of its activities, is paramount in tailoring the plan. Furthermore, the plan must outline how the risk management framework will be monitored, reviewed, and improved over time, reflecting the dynamic nature of risks and the organizational environment. This iterative process, guided by leadership commitment and appropriate resource allocation, fosters a proactive risk-aware culture. Question 23. When developing and implementing a risk treatment plan for a critical operational process, an organization identifies a significant risk related to supply chain disruption. The chosen treatment involves diversifying suppliers to reduce reliance on a single source. What is a crucial consideration during the implementation phase of this risk treatment, as per the principles of ISO 31000, 2018, to ensure the effectiveness of the overall risk management framework? Option A: evaluating the potential for new risks to arise from the process of onboarding and managing multiple new suppliers. Option B: documenting the initial risk assessment and treatment decision without subsequent review of the treatment's ongoing effectiveness. Option C: prioritizing the cost-effectiveness of each new supplier contract over the potential impact of their individual performance. Option D: focusing solely on the immediate reduction of the identified supply chain disruption risk, without considering other potential impacts. The correct answer is A: evaluating the potential for new risks to arise from the process of onboarding and managing multiple new suppliers. Explanation: the core of implementing a risk treatment plan under ISO 31000, 2018 involves selecting and applying appropriate risk treatments. ISO 31000, 2018, in Clause 6.4.2, outlines that the selection of risk treatment option should consider the potential to create or affect new risks. This means that when an organization decides on a course of action to modify risk e.g., avoidance, reduction, sharing, or acceptance, it must also assess whether this chosen action inadvertently introduces new risks or exacerbates existing ones. For instance, implementing a new cybersecurity control to reduce the risk of data breach might, in itself, introduce a risk of system downtime if the control malfunctions. Therefore, a critical aspect of effective risk treatment implementation is the continuous evaluation of the residual risk, which includes the impact of the chosen treatment and any new risks that may have emerged as a consequence of its application. This aligns with the iterative nature of risk management, ensuring that the overall risk exposure remains within acceptable levels, and that the treatment itself doesn't become a source of further vulnerability. The objective is to achieve a net positive effect on the organization's risk profile. Question 24. An international consortium is developing a new high-speed rail network, a project with significant geopolitical and environmental implications. The consortium includes governmental bodies from 3 countries, private investors, engineering firms, and environmental advocacy groups. According to ISO 31000, 2018 principles, what is the primary purpose of establishing a robust communication and consultation framework for this project from its inception? Option A: to primarily disseminate the final risk assessment reports to regulatory bodies for compliance verification and public disclosure. Option B: to solely focus on managing public perception and media relations concerning potential project risks and delays. Option C: to ensure that all relevant stakeholders are informed about the risk management process and have opportunities to provide input, thereby fostering trust and improving the quality of risk-informed decisions. Option D: to exclusively gather technical specifications and operational data from engineering partners to refine the risk analysis methodology. correct answer is C. To ensure that all relevant stakeholders are informed about the risk management process and have opportunities to provide input, thereby fostering trust and improving the quality of risk-informed decisions. Explanation. The fundamental principle of communication and consultation within ISO 31000-2018 is to ensure that all stakeholders involved in or affected by the risk management process are appropriately informed and have the opportunity to contribute their perspectives. This iterative process is crucial for building trust, facilitating effective decision-making, and enhancing the overall relevance and acceptance of risk treatments. Effective communication involves tailoring the message to the audience, considering their needs and understanding, and using appropriate channels. Consultation goes beyond mere information dissemination. It actively seeks input, feedback, and concerns from stakeholders to inform the risk management process, including the identification, analysis, evaluation, and treatment of risks. This ensures that the risk management framework is robust, practical, and aligned with the organization's objectives and the broader context in which it operates. The objective is not simply to inform, but to foster a shared understanding and commitment to managing risks, thereby improving organizational resilience and performance. Question 25. A multinational corporation, Ethelston Dynamics, is seeking to identify and assess emerging technological risks that could significantly impact its global supply chain over the next decade. Due to the highly speculative and evolving nature of these risks, traditional quantitative modeling is proving insufficient. The organization has assembled a diverse group of internal and external subject matter experts from fields such as artificial intelligence, quantum computing, advanced materials science, and geopolitical forecasting. Which specific attribute of the Delphi technique makes it particularly suitable for Ethelston Dynamics' objective of achieving a robust consensus on these complex, future-oriented technological risks, while mitigating the potential for bias? Option A. The reliance on a single, definitive expert opinion to expedite the decision-making timeline. Option B. The mandatory adherence to predefined quantitative metrics for all risk assessments. Option C. The direct interaction and open debate among participants to foster immediate idea generation. Option D. The structured anonymity of participant responses throughout the iterative feedback process. The correct answer is D. The structured anonymity of participant responses throughout the iterative feedback process. Explanation. The Delphi technique is a structured communication method that relies on a panel of experts. Its primary purpose is to achieve a consensus or a range of opinions on a complex issue where definitive data may be scarce or subjective. The process involves iterative rounds of questionnaires sent to a panel of experts. After each round, the facilitator summarizes the responses and provides feedback to the experts, who are then invited to revise their earlier answers. This iterative feedback loop, coupled with anonymity, aims to reduce the influence of dominant personalities or groupthink, allowing for a more objective and considered collective judgment. The core principle is to refine expert opinions through controlled feedback, moving towards a more reliable outcome. This method is particularly useful for forecasting, policy making, and identifying potential risks or opportunities in novel or uncertain environments, aligning with the risk identification and analysis phases of ISO 31000. The success of the Delphi technique hinges on the careful selection of experts, the clarity of the questions posed, and the skillful facilitation of the feedback process to encourage honest and independent thinking. Question 26. When establishing a robust risk management framework aligned with ISO 31000-2018, what element is considered the most foundational for ensuring its effective integration and sustained success throughout an organization's operations and decision-making processes? Option A. The comprehensive training of all personnel on risk identification techniques and the use of specialized risk assessment software. Option B. Unwavering commitment and active involvement from top management in guiding and overseeing the risk management process. Option C. The establishment of a dedicated risk management department with clearly defined reporting lines to the board of directors. Option D. The meticulous documentation of all identified risks and their corresponding mitigation strategies in a centralized risk register. The correct answer is B. Unwavering commitment and active involvement from top management in guiding and overseeing the risk management process. Explanation. The core of ISO 31000-2018 emphasizes that risk management is an integral part of an organization's governance and leadership. When implementing a risk management framework, the effectiveness hinges on the commitment and involvement of top management. This commitment is demonstrated through establishing clear roles and responsibilities, allocating adequate resources, and fostering a risk-aware culture. The standard outlines that the integration of risk management into organizational processes, including strategic planning and decision-making, is crucial for its success. This integration ensures that risks are considered in all activities, and that the risk management process is not a standalone function, but is embedded within the overall management system. The principles and guidelines provided in ISO 31000-2018 are designed to be scalable and adaptable to any organization, regardless of its size, sector, or nature of activities. Therefore, the most critical factor for successful implementation is the active engagement and support from leadership, which sets the tone and direction for the entire organization's risk management efforts. This includes ensuring that risk management objectives are aligned with the organization's overall objectives, and that the framework is continuously reviewed and improved. The standard also highlights the importance of communication and consultation with stakeholders throughout the risk management process. Question 27. When evaluating the effectiveness of controls within a bow-tie risk assessment framework for a critical industrial process, consider a scenario where a flammable gas leak is the primary hazard. The undesirable event is an uncontrolled ignition of this leaked gas. Which type of control, when implemented, primarily aims to prevent the flammable gas from reaching its ignition source, thereby reducing the likelihood of the undesirable event occurring from the initial hazard? Option A, consequence amelioration controls. Option B, escalation containment controls. Option C, preventative controls. Option D, residual risk reduction controls. The correct answer is C, preventative controls. Explanation. The bow-tie analysis model visually represents the pathways of risk, illustrating how a hazard can lead to an undesirable event through a series of escalating causes, and subsequently, how preventative and mitigating controls can be implemented. The central element is the undesirable event. To the left of the event, the causes are depicted, with controls aimed at preventing these causes from reaching the event. These are termed preventative controls or prevention barriers. To the right of the event, the consequences of the event are shown, with controls aimed at reducing the impact or preventing escalation of these consequences. These are termed mitigating controls or mitigation barriers. In a bow-tie analysis, the effectiveness of controls is assessed based on their position in the diagram relative to the undesirable event. Controls positioned to the left, preventing the hazard from materializing or escalating into the undesirable event, are considered preventative. Controls positioned to the right, reducing the impact or preventing the escalation of the consequences once the undesirable event has occurred, are considered mitigating. Therefore, a control that reduces the likelihood of a fire starting, e.g., proper electrical maintenance, is a preventative control, while a control that limits the spread of fire once it has ignited, e.g., fire-resistant materials, is a mitigating control. The question asks about a control that reduces the likelihood of the undesirable event occurring from its causes. This directly aligns with the definition of preventative controls in the bow-tie model. Question 28. An organization is undertaking a comprehensive review of its strategic objectives and the potential impediments or enablers to their achievement, as mandated by its commitment to ISO 31000-2018 principles. The leadership team has decided to utilize a SWOT analysis as a preliminary step in their risk identification process. Considering the iterative nature of risk management and the standard's emphasis on understanding the context and objectives, which aspect of the SWOT analysis provides the most direct input for identifying potential risks and opportunities that require formal consideration within the ISO 31000 risk management framework? Option A, the identification of external factors that could positively or negatively impact the organization's ability to achieve its objectives. Option B, the evaluation of existing operational processes and their inherent inefficiencies that might lead to control failures. Option C, the analysis of stakeholder expectations and their potential influence on the organization's strategic direction and risk perception. Option D, the assessment of internal capabilities and limitations that influence the organization's risk appetite and tolerance levels. The correct answer is A. The identification of external factors that could positively or negatively impact the organization's ability to achieve its objectives. Explanation: ISO 31000, 2018 emphasizes the integration of risk management into an organization's governance and decision-making processes. While a SWOT analysis is a valuable strategic planning tool, its direct application within the ISO 31000 framework for risk identification and treatment requires careful consideration of how each component aligns with the standard's principles and processes. Strengths and weaknesses are internal factors that an organization can influence. In the context of ISO 31000, these directly inform the organization's capacity to manage risk, influencing the design and effectiveness of controls and the selection of risk treatment options. Opportunities and threats are external factors. Opportunities can be leveraged to achieve objectives and may present new risks or ways to mitigate existing ones. Threats represent potential events or conditions that could negatively impact the achievement of objectives, thus requiring risk assessment and treatment. When considering the primary focus of a SWOT analysis in relation to the core risk management process, as defined by ISO 31000, the external factors, opportunities and threats, are most directly linked to the identification and assessment of risks that could affect the achievement of objectives. These external elements are the source of many potential risks that the organization must proactively manage. Therefore, the most direct and primary contribution of a SWOT analysis to the ISO 31000 risk management process is the identification of external factors that may create risks or opportunities. Question 29. When assessing the ongoing efficacy of a risk management framework implemented in accordance with ISO 31000, 2018, what constitutes the most thorough approach to monitoring and review, ensuring continuous improvement and alignment with organizational objectives and context? Option A. A review of incident reports and near misses to identify control failures and to update risk assessments based on the severity and frequency of these events. Option B. Benchmarking the organization's risk management maturity against industry best practices and competitor performance to identify areas for enhancement. Option C. A systematic evaluation of the framework's design, implementation, and operational performance against defined criteria and objectives, incorporating feedback from all relevant stakeholders and considering changes in the internal and external environment. Option D. Periodic audits of risk registers and treatment plans to verify compliance with documented procedures and to identify any new risks that have emerged since the last review. The correct answer is C. A systematic evaluation of the framework's design, implementation, and operational performance against defined criteria and objectives, incorporating feedback from all relevant stakeholders and considering changes in the internal and external environment. Explanation: the core of effective risk management, as outlined in ISO 31000, 2018, lies in its continuous improvement cycle. Monitoring and review are critical components of this cycle, ensuring the risk management framework remains relevant, effective, and aligned with the organization's evolving objectives and context. Clause 9 of the standard, Performance, specifically addresses monitoring, measurement, analysis, and evaluation. It emphasizes that an organization should monitor and review its risk management performance to identify changes that could affect the achievement of its objectives. This includes reviewing the effectiveness of risk treatments, the adequacy of the risk management framework itself, and the achievement of risk management objectives. The process of monitoring and review should not be a one-off event, but an ongoing activity integrated into the organization's operations and decision-making processes. It involves gathering information about the performance of risk treatments, the effectiveness of controls, and the overall risk landscape. This information is then analyzed to evaluate whether the risk management framework is operating as intended and whether it is still fit for purpose. The outcomes of this evaluation feed back into the design and implementation of the risk management process, enabling continuous improvement. Therefore, the most comprehensive and aligned approach to ensuring the ongoing effectiveness of the risk management framework involves a systematic evaluation of its design, implementation, and operational performance against established criteria and objectives. This evaluation should encompass both the process and the outcomes, considering changes in the internal and external context. Question 30. Consider a scenario where an organization is undertaking a significant digital transformation initiative involving the implementation of a new enterprise-wide cloud-based system. The risk management implementer is tasked with facilitating a dialogue session to discuss potential risks associated with data security and system integration. The participants include IT specialists, departmental end users from various functions, and legal counsel. What is the most effective approach for the implementer to facilitate this dialogue, to ensure comprehensive risk identification and foster informed decision-making, adhering to the principles of ISO 31000-2018? Option A. Primarily focus the discussion on technical risk assessments provided by the IT department, with limited time allocated for end-user feedback to maintain efficiency and ensure the dialogue remains focused on expert opinions. Option B. Organize separate, sequential meetings for each stakeholder group to gather their individual risk perceptions, and then consolidate these into a single report without direct interaction between the groups during the dialogue phase. Option C. Delegate the primary responsibility for risk identification to the legal counsel, given the regulatory implications of data security, and then present their findings to the other groups for confirmation. Option D. Structure the session to encourage open sharing of concerns from all participants, using neutral facilitation techniques to guide the discussion towards identifying potential vulnerabilities and their consequences, while actively seeking input from less vocal stakeholders to ensure a balanced perspective on risk. The correct answer is D. Structure the session to encourage open sharing of concerns from all participants, using neutral facilitation techniques to guide the discussion towards identifying potential vulnerabilities and their consequences, while actively seeking input from less vocal stakeholders to ensure a balanced perspective on risk. Explanation. ISO 31000-2018 emphasizes that risk management is an iterative process and that effective communication and consultation are crucial throughout. Facilitating dialogue is a key aspect of consultation, aiming to gather diverse perspectives, build understanding, and ensure buy-in for risk management activities. When facilitating dialogue, an implementer must ensure that all relevant stakeholders, including those with differing viewpoints or levels of expertise, have an opportunity to contribute. This involves creating an environment where open and honest discussion can occur, free from undue influence or bias. The objective is not necessarily to reach a consensus immediately, but to foster a shared understanding of risks, their potential impacts, and the proposed treatment strategies. This process aligns with the principle of integration within the framework, where risk management is embedded into all organizational activities and decision-making processes, requiring effective engagement with those involved. The dialogue should be structured to elicit valuable input for risk identification, analysis, evaluation, and treatment, as well as for monitoring and review.